Sierra Nevada mountains slowed down the Union Pacific Company.
Do not keep up to date.
And they were in a race to see who could lay down the most strike. I need to see a gold medal. Great. Good job.
Yeah.
Show the
0 points. It actually gets rid of
I finally put my SIM card back into this one. So now I have 4 bars. I have 4 bars right now. What are you doing? Why?
I think you should put that away. Thank you. Yes. Hey, you should put that away. Thank you. Great, so last class we talked about settlements in Utah. Here's some of the issues they were dealing with. Great. Class, can I have your attention? Appreciate that. Gentlemen. Thank you. Great, so yeah, we talked about settlements last time. If no one's familiar with this, here's some of the issues they ran into while they were settling. Again, there wasn't a way for them to communicate with people on the outside. They were having issues with Native Americans, again, isolated. They were unfamiliar with the environment and how things were run. Great. So their crops were having issues as well, had a ton of grasshoppers, crickets, and locusts in the area, as well as not super familiar with the area, so the farming was just difficult. It's hard to find fertile land. It's Utah, you know. So we covered quite a bit of this last time, just talking about how Brigham Young had called people or assigned people to settle new places, developed the sugar house, production in that area, and then the official church immigration ended in 1913. So 1869 was when the Transcontinental Railroad was finished, and then the official church immigration ended in 1913. Again, they came through in 4 different eras. The hand cart, the ox cart, down the back wagon train, and then the steam locomotives. So the Transcontinental Railroad is what we're talking about today, the completion. Does anyone know what transcontinental means? Hollywood? Okay. Movement, yeah. Okay. Pretty good. Did you have one in the back? Okay, you stole your answer. No problem. So, it just means it crossed the entire continent. Doesn't distinctly mean travel, or it just means that there's something that goes across the entire continent. So yeah, so if you took like the Mississippi River, it's like up and down across not North America, but the U.S. Pretty good. So positive effects. Can anyone think of any positive effects that they found during the startup today? Yeah. Yeah. Travel makes it travel a lot easier. Anyone have another positive? Yeah. Okay, made mining quite a bit easier. Yeah. Yes, sir.
They actually had like a plot script for movies where like a girl would get run over by a train and saved by a hero.
Okay. Well, I mean, they had train tracks in other places, but that's an interesting take on it for sure. So here's some of the positive effects that I found. Again, mining was easier. They were able to transport raw materials, make more money, faster travel. They were able to bring cheaper products in from other areas. So like we said before, during settlement, they were kind of isolated, and you could only buy and sell from each other in your community. But this opened up free markets there in Utah, and spread technology quite a bit faster, so that's a little bit better for them. Can anyone think of negative effects from the starter today? Yeah. Train robberies was a big negative. Do you have one in the back?
No, wait, I did.
Okay.
I'm fixed.
Yes, ma'am. A lot of people died creating the railroad, yeah.
Okay, so this is his answer.
Okay.
Railroad girl strapped and died.
Okay. Yes, sir. Natives did lose land, yeah, so oh, there's the microphone went out. Hello? There it goes.
Hello.
Hopefully it doesn't crack. Oh no. Good job. So yeah, Native Americans lost quite a bit of land. They just kind of took it from them and they were like, we're going to build the railroads here, so deal with it, okay? So competition from stores outside of Utah, like I said, it opened up the free market, so a lot of businesses were losing money. Bush Cassidy is a train robber. Great, there's some of the negative effects. So here's the United States before the Transcontinental Railroad. What can you notice about this map that's not the same as our map now? Yes, sir.
No one lives in the middle.
Okay. So what's different about the middle in this map compared to our map now? Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Mexico.
Mexico's not on this map. Okay. Yes, sir.
Kind of like shaped differently.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's Nebraska in this map, right? That's not where Nebraska is now, right? Right. That's not all of Nebraska. Right. Here's Nebraska. Here's Utah, the Utah Territory. Right. So there's just not a lot of development going on out here because the travel was difficult, right? We talked about this during the oxen cart and the hand cart era. People were traveling and dying. There was a lot of people trying to make it out here that weren't making it out here, right? So the development of these areas is scarce, right? There's not a ton of people out here developing what's going to be going on. So you can see kind of like where the original 13 colonies were over here, and like how these states have clearly defined like boundaries and everything. And then these territories are just, they're unknown, right? There's people out there, there are settlements, but they're not as developed, right? So what happens after the Transcontinental Railroad? Right? So here's kind of a physical map of the United States. Rocky Mountains, again, super difficult to kind of trek through, get past, and that's a big reason why there's not a ton of development out here, right? So we talked about that during migration.
And now it's what that Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, so what's changed in this map? Yes, sir.
There is more orange,
Okay.
and the states are like.
So these states have been
now.
acclimated into the union. Okay.
And they're like borders now.
Yeah.
Utah,
Developed
looks like
borders
Utah.
for sure. Yes, sir.
It looks like our map now.
Yeah, they've developed state boundaries, right? These territories now have clearly defined boundaries. What's the reason for that? Yes, sir.
English colonization.
Okay, yeah, so they were able to, this is after the Transcontinental Railroad, right? So there's a ton of people coming out from east. Who knows what happened in 1849?
Wait, I don't know if that's right, but is that when the half
That was Civil War. That was, yes, sir. Yeah, so, thank you. Yeah, class. Gentlemen, did you hear what he said? Yeah, so it was a gold rush in 1849. So people heard that there was a ton of gold in California, and they were like, we got to get our hands on some of this gold, right? It's just in the rivers, you can just pick it up, and you can be rich, right? So they built the Transcontinental Railroad around that time, 20 years later, and people were still trying to get out here and develop that, right? So the development happens much more quickly after the Transcontinental Railroad is built. Here's a cool coin, E Pluribus Unum, Utah, 1896, the crossroads of the West. Yeah. So does anyone know why there's trains going in two different directions? Okay, there's a race. Yeah. Yeah, there was two different companies working their way across the United States. Does everyone know where they started? It's a coin that was minted in 2007. This didn't happen, yeah. This happened in 18... I'm not a coin collector, so I'm not certain. It's just, yeah, it's just a cool picture.
Yay.
Great. So, the Golden Spike, 1869, Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads had a common summit. Here's a cool picture of the meeting. Right, they had champagne to christen the trains. It's two trains coming from the separate areas. Right, the two companies working together to get there. So why Utah? Does anyone have an idea of why they decided on Utah? It wasn't in the middle. Yes.
Because it was most likely, it would take, if they're the same amount of time to get there, because
Okay.
whatever this side was, the California side, they had to go through all the mountains,
Yeah.
and then the other side just had to do more, like a mile.
Yeah. So that's a good reason why this company was able to lay more track, right? What did this company run into?
Mountains,
Which one?
Rocky,
Yes, ma'am. The Sierra Nevada mountains, that's correct. So the Central Pacific and Union Pacific, those are the two companies, you should know that. The Central Pacific and Union Pacific were in a race to see who could lay down the most tracks. Sierra Nevada mountains slowed down the Union Pacific, and Utah became the meeting place. Right, so they were slowed down. A lot of people died as they came through in the winter in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and so they weren't able to lay as much track. They had to use a lot of dynamite to blast through those mountains. Get you to put that away. Appreciate that. So who built the railroads? They had a lot of immigrants come over, mostly Chinese and Irish. There was Dutch, English, German. They had a ton of immigrants come over and help build the railroad, but it was mostly Chinese and Irish. So can anyone think of a reason why immigrants would want to do this?
Money.
Money. Money's a good reason. Yes.
Because nobody accepted them.
Okay, so they were having a hard time kind of finding work in big cities. They came over and they were like, hey, we're ready to work. But there weren't a lot of jobs because there's kind of this ethnocentrism happening on the East Coast. And so they offered them quite a bit of money to come work on these railroads, right? Enough to like risk your life to go in and be like, okay, I can build these railroads. So what I want you to do now is just take out a flashcard, write your first and last name on it, along with the class period. And I just want you to write down 2 to 3 thoughts about these questions up here. So how did the railroad change people's everyday lives in Utah? And what are some big changes in the last 10 years that have changed our lives? And how? So you don't have to write the questions down, just write down your thoughts on the questions, maybe some answers. I don't know. I only have one first period class.
Flashcards.
You have B for students?
I have a crappy one.
Wow.
Crappy because I prepare my classes. Yeah, that's a good time.
How did the railroad do this?
So you just write down 2 to 3 thoughts or answers to these questions. how did the railroad change people's everyday lives in Utah? And what are some big changes in the last 10 years that have changed our lives, and how? Yeah. Oh, do you need like to borrow them? Or okay. Yeah. Yes, sir. No, it doesn't have to be about travel or transportation. It can be about technology,
Sweet.
innovation, apps, anything like that.
Our 10 years?
Yeah, in the last 10 years of United States.
My uncle
Zachary Brimhall.
You got wind time.
Oh! You got wrecked.
Jed.
Yes, sir.
Oh!
I've had wind time 2 days in a row.
I've never had
It's special. Yeah, that's the one.
What did you guys write down? Does anyone want to volunteer? Anyone just have like a brilliant thought in their head and they're like, everyone needs to hear about this? Yes, sir. Class.
I did phones,
Okay.
Skyface, this is my iPhone X7S, Samsung 7S, 7, and texting.
Okay. Okay. So is the iPhone 8 and the Samsung 7 really like changing people's lives?
Yes.
Okay. I'm
Very great.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh!
Class. Thank you. Okay. That is a big change. Yeah. There's better cars. Yeah, sure. Yes, sir. Class. What was it? So yeah, there's new technologies that are coming out. Is there anything specific that's coming out that's like life changing? Okay.
We have microwaves.
So microwaves have been around for a long time. Yeah. So that's a good idea. So I'm going to need some volunteers for this next activity. I just need 8 volunteers. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, that was nice. Right. Woo.
Can I get you guys, the volunteers, to come up here?
Yes.
Appreciate that.
What the frick, bro? Hey,
What's up?
you pick me. I'll take right spot. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
What the heck? Why is that? Take this. And we'll take this. It's coming out really bad.
Class, I need 2 more volunteers. Sorry.
Don't leave it. Yes.
Sorry. Who wants to run the slideshow?
I got a
They'll do the talking. Great. So, anchor woman, so you'll have lines. Quarter 1, quarter 2, going to be the Chinese laborer, Irish laborer, soldier, railroad construction engineer, you'll be the woman, and black laborer.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So class, what we're going to do is a little role play. These guys are going to act out this newsroom conference. What I want you to do is kind of listen to what they're saying and just write down any notes that you or interesting thoughts you're having during this. We're going to watch a few video clips to kind of put this all in perspective for you. So just pay attention to what they're saying. Oh, there's a German worker as well.
Can she be it?
Please, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're
I'm a German worker.
You're the Chinese worker.
Great.
So you guys, feel free to spread yourselves around. Have some people over in that corner, some over here, maybe some in the back.
Can we switch?
Yeah.
Can I be the black person?
Yeah. Yeah, I gave some to you. Yeah. Great. So, move over to the next slide. It's at the computer.
1 second. What am I doing?
Great. So let's give them some respect. Try not to be talking while they're talking. So whenever Anchor Woman 1 is ready, we'll go ahead and get started. I have everything set up. So when it gets down and it says clip 1, you don't go on beyond that. I'll play a video clip. Okay?
That dog's cute.
Great. So Anchor Woman 1 will start us off. And again, all of you that are not participating in this, just go ahead and write down interesting thoughts that you're having while they're talking about this. Okay? Great. On the paper. Yeah, start over.
This is Network News in New York, and reporters are on a special assignment in Promontory Point in Utah. Good evening. Today, May 10th, 1869, is day 1 of the truly United States of America.
That's Anchor Woman 1 still.
This afternoon at 2:27 p.m., the Transcontinental Railroad will be completed for almost 4 years. The Union Pacific has been building westward from Nebraska, while the Central Pacific has been building eastward from California. Today, the two railroads meet at a barren spot in northern Utah chosen by the U.S. government and known as Promontory Point. The railroads will be sealed together when the last spike is pounded into the rails. And now, for the on-spot coverage of the greatest railroad event in American history, we switch to a report since Promontory Point.
It's a clear spring day in Utah. The weather's been cold, but that actually been a help to these workers. Yesterday, they finished slaying the last of the track.
In
In just a few minutes now, the last spike will be driven into the track, and the transcontinental railroad will become a reality. I have here a railroad construction engineer who is willing to tell us about how these tracks are laid.
2 men size the ends of a rail. 2 men seize the ends of a rail. They come forward at a run. The rail is dropped into place. Close behind comes the gaugers. Spikes and bolters in lively time. They make it of it. 3 strokes to the spike, 10 spikes to the rail, 400 rails to a mile, 1,800 miles to San Francisco.
Freaking lit. What happened?
There shouldn't be a lot of talking. Come on!
Whoa, amazing! Wait, this is an hour and 23 minutes.
It is a grand anvil chorus that these sturdy sledges are playing across the plain. It is in triple time, 3 strokes to a spike. 21 million times are they to come down with their sharp punctuation before the great work of modern America is complete. Dr. William A. Bell.
In Nebraska, some 10,000 men were at work on the Union Pacific, heading west. Most were immigrants from Ireland, but there were also Mexicans and Germans, Englishmen, ex-soldiers and former slaves. An army of workmen moving across the plains with military precision. There was no time for rest. A 20-car work train housed and fed the men who rose at dawn. A supply train carried everything needed that day: rails, ties, spikes, rods, all of which had to be loaded onto flat cars and run up to the railhead where the ironmen were already waiting. Each rail weighed 700 pounds. It took 5 men to lift it into place. 2, 3 miles a day, every day, 6 days a week, week in and week out. As the Union Pacific crews worked their way westward across the prairie.
And now let's hear from some people from behind the scenes. You young man, tell us your name and where you are from.
Sure. I'm Patrick Hannigan, ma'am, from Ireland, but glad enough to leave that land of famine I was. I've been working for the Central Pacific. I crossed the sea for the railroad's offer of an honest wage for a good day's work. True, 'tis been 6 days a week of back-breaking work, but now it's complete, and I'm proud of me labors.
And you? Sung Yu, my name, from China. I've been here 4 years now. I see, Sung. I am told that you and your fellow workers had a blast through the Sierra Nevada mountains at an altitude of 7,000 feet. Oh yes, build bridges too, across many high gorge, blast tunnels too. Use many sticks of dynamite, many men die.
Oh, excuse me, my husband is Stanford on the partners in the Central Pacific Railroad companies, so I do know a little about this. You ought to hear about the problems we have had creating this line. The mountains supply plenty of timber for tiles and trestles
expensive and time-consuming, I'm sure.
The company certainly didn't have an adequate supply for workers. They had to bring in at least 10,000 workers, and nearly all of them those are Chinese.
Three out of five stuck with him just long enough to get a free ride to the railhead, then set out on their own in Nevada goldfields. His plans called for a workforce of 5,000. He had fewer than 600. Desperate, he suggested to the superintendent of construction, James Schroeder, that he try the Chinese who now a living working the gold and silver tailings standing by others. Schroeder was against it. He thought the Chinese were too small, too frail. They had no experience building railroads. Crocker told Strobridge to give the Chinese a chance. After all, he said, they had built the Great Wall of China. The first Chinese began turning up in early 1865, eager to work. They were already organized into work gangs, each with its own headman.
Papa expected these fellows to come up there, one who is like the other nationality. She kind of marched up there, one group, and all he had to do is cheer with the foreman of that group, because he would defend him.
Before long, 11,000 Chinese were at work on the Central Pacific. Crocker was advertising for more in China. But hard work alone was no match for the Sierra Nevadas. Strobridge worried that the Central Pacific was falling even further behind in their race with the Union Pacific. And soon armed the Chinese with black powder to blast their way through. It took 500 kegs of it a day, week after week, to carve cuts through the foot. And then they came up against a face they called Cape Horn, solid rock that was straight up and down, 2,000 feet above a raging river. There were no footholds, but the Chinese were told to make a ledge in the place, wide enough to entrench.
My grandfather was one of the people that would put a basket because it was small, light. And what they did was they would lower those clear, and they would drill holes, and then they would set the diamonds. And then they would light the diamonds, and then they would put it on by the basket, and then they had to get out of there because the diamonds.
Huge masses of rocks and debris were rent and heaved up in the commotion. Then came the thunders of the explosion like a lightning strokes, reverberating along the hills and canyons as if the whole artillery of heaven was dispersed.
Before the Central Pacific could get through the Sierras, the crews had to gouge out 15 tons. They worked in shifts around the clock, but averaged just 8 inches a day. And they had to keep at it every kind of way.
Snowstorm, 44 in number, varied in length from a short snow squall with 2 gales. The heaviest storm of the winter began February 18th at 2 p.m. and snowed steadily until 10 p.m. of the 22nd, during which time 6 feet fell. John R. Hughes.
It's covered in snow.
That's why it has a line through the Sierra back into the winter. And the Chinese came out to build the railroad through the tracks. So they built these tunnels under the snow, keep advancing the line. And sometimes there would be snowfall. An entire cruise of Chinese would be trapped under tons of snow. And the bodies would be left there and found the following spring. Sometimes the bodies were found with picks and the shovels still in their hands.
No one kept a precise count, but more than 1,200 Chinese died digging and blasting the Charles Crocker Central Pacific.
When somebody died, you just did going for him to put it down in the grave. You went to a lot of trouble to get his remains back to the village that he came from. Because the Chinese doesn't want to be buried anyway. He wants to be buried where his ancestors were buried. Because he wants to be the Arab.
Finally, in 1868, after 3 long years of back-breaking, dangerous labor, the Central Pacific crew did what few had believed anyone could do. They broke out of the high Sierras.
John China, with his patient toil, directed by American energy and backed by American capital, has broken down the Great Barrier at last, and opened over it the greatest highway yet created for the march of commerce and civilization around the globe. Territorial enterprise.
The hardest part was behind them. The Central Pacific was back in the race.
Are there any other foreign nationals involved in this work?
Yes, and there has been quite a spirit of rivalry between the different railroad companies on this project. I'm talking now with Union Pacific Labor from Germany. Sir, tell me about this rivalry.
Yeah, one day, madam, we made a bet with those Central Pacific boys to see who could lay the most track in a day. The bet was 10,000. They beat us. Can you believe 10 miles of track in one day? Oh, the United States government made it worth the effort with their offers of free land. Someone could get very rich.
When you built
The West couldn't be settled without railroads, and a railroad across the West couldn't be built without the government. The distances were too great, costs too staggering, the risks too high for any group of businessmen.
It was only through the government's help that anything of this gargantuan size could be accomplished, much as landing on the moon. It was not rugged individualists who built the railroad. It was rugged corporations who formed, financed themselves as entities. It was the rugged federal government that came up with the federal loans and the land grants that enabled it to be built. Amid all the romance of the building of the railroad, we tend to forget that. It was one of the major industrial enterprises of its age.
In 1862, Congress gave charters to 2 companies to build it. The Central Pacific was to push eastward from Sacramento over the Sierra Nevada mountains. The Union Pacific was to start from the Missouri, cross the Great Plains, and cut through the Rockies. Both companies were to receive vast loans from the Treasury as they went along.
$16,000 per mile of level track, $32,000 in the plateaus, and $48,000 in the mountains. Lobbyists got the rates doubled within a year. Leland Stanford, governor of California and president of the Central Pacific Railroad, persuaded a malleable geologist, Professor Josiah Whitney, to declare the gently sloping Sacramento Valley a mountainous region, so that the Central Pacific could collect the highest possible rate for laying track across it. A grateful California legislature later named its highest peak Mount Whitney in the professor's honor. Congress also promised each company 6,400 acres of federal land for every mile of track it laid.
The railroads got the right-of-way, and along the right-of-way, miles and miles of what was then the government's land. When you added it all together, it was a gift of roughly the size of California plus most of Montana. It was incredible.
The Union Pacific and Central Pacific were soon locked in a race to see who could lay the most track, and therefore get the most land and money. Somewhere in the West, no one knew exactly where, the two lines were supposed to meet.
I have here with me now a soldier who was one of those traveling with the railroad workers as they moved along through the wilderness. Young man, why was it necessary for you to move with the workers?
Well, ma'am, it seems the Indians in our way didn't take to the railroad moving into their homelands. They didn't seem to understand this new invasion. They attacked the trains and workers often. We are called in to help protect the workers and the track they laid.
Young man, you are the chief engineer of the Union Pacific. Would you explain what happened at Plum Creek?
The Indians had captured a freight train and were in possession of it and the crew. On my train were perhaps 20 men. The excitement of the capture and the reports coming in by telegraph of the burning train brought all men to the platform. And when I called upon them to fall and to go forward and retake the train, every man went into line. We ran down slowly until we came in sight of the train, and the command they went forward steadily, and in good order, as we had seen the old soldiers climb the face of Keensaw under fire.
Here's another worker, a former slave. That was also the problem of getting enough food to feed all these workers. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am. That's right for sure. All of those plains, there were only two things living besides sagebrush. One was Indians and the other was buffalo. Them railroad companies hired hunters to go kill the animals to feed all of us. One hunter named Billy Cody killed most 5,000 of them creatures in 1 year.
Astonished Lewis and Clark by their sheer numbers. One wagon train of pioneers was blocked for hours by a herd 3 miles wide and 10 miles long. But for the native peoples of the plains, they represented existence itself.
The buffalo, which was the animal representation of the sun, was the sacrificial victim of the Sundance. The Sundance was a great celebration, a great social occasion. And the sun dancers were expressing their spirit in order to gain certain power. They wanted to be victorious in war. They wanted to give thanks for something good that had come to them. A buffalo bull is sacrificed, and its head is impaled in Sundance lodge or near it. And part of the ritual you can't have at Sundance without buffalo.
By the late 1860s, their numbers had already declined, reduced by disease, competition from horse herds, and by the buffalo robe trade that encouraged some Indian bands to kill more than they needed. And now, the Union Pacific hired men to hunt buffalo, to feed the hungry railroad crews as they built their iron road across Indian land.
We saw the first train of cars that any of us had seen. We looked at it from a high ridge. Far off it was very small, but it kept coming and growing larger all the time, puffing out smoke and steam. And as it came on, we said to each other that it looked like a white man's pipe when he was smoking. Porcupine.
The Cheyenne and the Arapaho and Lakota resented the railroad's intrusion. They derailed trains, ransacked freight cars, fired on surveying crews. The Union Pacific fell behind the schedule. On June 26, 1867, an Army detail was overtaken by a war party. One of those killed was Frederick Williams, who had come all the way from England in search of adventure.
Another Englishman, an amateur ethnologist, photographed his countryman's corpse.
The ceremonies are starting to get underway here. A ceremonial spike of gold, silver, and iron is being offered by the territory of Arizona. State governors and railroad directors are taking turns at driving the spikes into place.
Governor Leland Stanford, the governor of California, whose wife we spoke to earlier, will drive the golden spikes.
Telegraph stations all across the country are preparing for this event, as each of the 3 final blows of the sledgehammer is struck. The telegraph hammer will also be struck. These blows will be heard in every telegraph office from one coast to another.
They've done it! The golden spike is in place. The crowd is going wild. The 2 trains are coming toward each other now, very slowly, blowing their whistles.
Each engineer is leaning out of his cab. Now each is breaking a bottle of champagne on the other's cab. The Transcontinental Railroad has been christened.
We know the whole country is celebrating. We will turn to you, Katie, in the studio for more on these festivities.
The last rail is laid, the last spike is driven, the Pacific Railroad is now completed. This was the message telegraphed from coast to coast this afternoon. The celebrations triggered by that message are in progress right now. Thank you. Owen.
By the spring of 1869, the competition between the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific was converging on northern Utah. Rival armies of railroadmen vied to cover the most ground and earn the most money for their employers, before the 2 lines finally met. They tried to outdo one another, first laying 5 miles of track in a single day, then 6, then 7, and then 10 miles. A pace of railroad building such as the world had never seen. No fixed rendezvous point had ever been established. Grading crews for the 2 companies, working far ahead of the track layer, passed each other in opposite directions, and pushed on for hundreds of miles, sometimes working so close to one another that explosions set off by one work gang spattered its rivals with dirt. Finally, the government intervened and picked Promontory Summit, 56 miles west of Ogden, as the place where the 2 lines would meet. The race across the West was coming to a close at last. On May 10th, 1869, everything was ready.
Are you watching the videos? There's nothing interesting in there?
A telegrapher stood by to signal to both coasts, all points in between, the driving of the final spike.
To everybody, keep quiet. When the last spike is driven at promontory point, we will say done. Don't break the circuit, but watch for the signals of the blows of the hammer.
We understand. All are ready in the east.
4 spikes, 2 gold, 1 silver, and the 4th a blend of gold, silver, and iron, were to be tapped gently into position with the silver maul to mark the occasion. And then a final spike, an ordinary one, but wired to the telegrapher's key, was to be hammered into the ground.
O Father, hats off. Prayer
God
to
of
the
our fathers, we desire to acknowledge thy handiwork in this great work.
The spike will
And
be
that
driven.
on us your assembly, and that mighty enterprise may be unto us as the Atlantic of thy strength, and the Pacific of thy love. Through Jesus the Redeemer. Amen.
We have got done praying. The spike is about to be presented.
The final spike was slid into place. Leland Stanford of the Central Pacific was to have the honor of driving it home.
The signal will be 3 dots for the commencement of the blows.
Stanford swung the hammer high above his head, brought it down, and missed. The telegrapher closed the circuit anyway.
Done.
In Washington, a great cheer went up from the big crowd in front of the telegraph office. And
An illuminated ball dropped from the dome of the Capitol. At Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the Liberty Bell was Jesus, so that its track was not working. In San Francisco, the huge banner was unfurled as the plane California annexed the United States. The vast distances of the West had at last been conquered. A journey that had once taken months would now be accomplished in a matter of days. Once the rails were joined at promontory, I think we can say that we began for the first time truly to think of ourselves as a continental nation. Kind of a reach of the national consciousness into a place that had once only been occupied by dreams and myths and imagination. And here was the great technological marvel of its time, crashing through those mythic barriers and going into a very real place.
That moment at promontory point, a moment of tremendous significance because of the assignment. It foretold the whole story of technology coming into machine. And what can be more symbolic of that day?
Thank you for reporting on this historic event.
It has been a pleasure.
We have enjoyed being a part of this historic event uniting the East and the West.
From the newsroom here in New York City, saying thank you.
Great job, everybody.
Clicker back. Bull, it's over now. you need to get out of here.
Great. So on the last page of those notes there should be a little bit of room there at the bottom of the page. I want you to just go ahead and write down 5 to 6 thoughts about the videos, about the presentation, about the idea of connecting the entire United States at this time. Any of your thoughts that you're having directly about the Transcontinental Railroad.
On the note card?
On the last page. You can do it on the last page of your notes, or you can do it on the other side of that note card. I'm going to collect the note cards and these notes. So hopefully if you weren't participating, you wrote something in your notes. Yeah, or on the flashcard, whichever one. I'm going to collect both of them. Yeah, just 5 to 6 thoughts about the Transcontinental Railroad. Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so just write down what you thought about the video, how you felt about them connecting the railroads. Sorry, what? Yeah, we're going to just turn those in up here at my desk. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so make sure you turn in your packet and your flashcard notes. You don't have to. I just need your name on the flashcard. Right there. Thank you. So you should have 4 to 6 notes at the end of your packet or on your flashcard about the Transcontinental Railroad. That works, yeah. The Union Pacific, Central Pacific. Packet here, notes there. You don't have to write your name on the packets. That's fine if you did. I just need your name on your note cards. Just the one you're turning in. The note cards. So does anyone not have the Unit 2 project that's in this class? I know I've handed those out.
What is the Unit 2 project?
So there's the Unit 2 project. So we moved on to the Pioneer Studies. This is a heritage project. Yes. I don't have those yet. It is 3 paragraphs. Yes, ma'am. Okay, is there anyone else in this class that didn't get one? Show of hands. So I need 4, 5, 6. The Unit 2 project.
What is the Unit 2 project?
That's mine.
I'm sitting right here.
There's a pencil. No, that's my too.
That's the one about what the family. If you took my budget, I would say
We know good. I'll send out an email today with some questions for you to ask your at-home grown-ups or whoever you're doing. Yeah. Heritage Utah. How you want Was there someone on this who needs one of these? Unit 2 projects? Did you need one? Did you have one of these? Unit 2 projects? You guys need one?
I was gonna give it to you.
Class, can I have your attention in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, so I'm going to send an email today to all of your at-home grown-ups. You'll probably receive it as well. It's just going to have a few questions for you guys to kind of go over and just learn some more about your heritage in Utah and how your story is part of the bigger story. Again, this isn't going to be due until the middle of October. I think we're going to be doing the presentations for these on the 16th and 17th. Just over there with the rest of them. Thank you. There's about 5 minutes left in class. Try to be productive. Feel free to start working on some other assignments. We didn't get a chance to work on our guide-oramas today. We'll take some more time next class period to finish those up. We should have 1 through 14 done by next class period for Unit 2. The Unit 2 guide-oramas will be due here shortly. So those will be due in a couple weeks, I believe. So just make sure you're all up to date on your guide-oramas. Please return all of the Utah history books to the front of the classroom. Do me a kindness and just pick up some trash around your desk if there is any. Great work today, everybody. Thanks for the volunteers.
Oh my gosh. 3 times help me.